Hello and welcome to PCI's Code It videocast series. I'm Kristen Johansson and I'm the editor-in-chief of PCI Magazine. Ship and Shore Environmental Incorporated, or S&SE, is a California-based woman-owned business specializing in air pollution capture and control systems for industrial applications. The company's CEO, Anusha Aksuyan, is here today to discuss environmental plans under the Biden administration and the challenges and potential opportunities that these new plans and policies may bring. Hi, Anusha. Thanks for joining me today.
Hello, Kristen. Thank you for having me online with you and continuing with this exciting conversation.
You're welcome. I'm excited to get started. So, Anusha, what can you tell us about the Biden administration's plans to help our environment?
I like to start by one of the most important things that it literally had me drop from my chair when I read in New York Times. It was May of 2020, which was a rollback of 98 rules and regulations that we had that the previous administration just decided to make sure that they will either abolish some of them or to make sure that companies and as a whole, our country is not paying much attention to it. And I kept that copy to remind myself that not to ever allow something like that to take place as much as I possibly could as a company owner that was devoted to making sure that we do things right for the industry. And the title was All 98 Environmental Rules the Trump Administration is Revoking or Rolling Back, 98 of them. So the Biden administration, soon after, I believe it was January of 27th, decided to put a lot of focus back on the climate change that had been totally ignored. And as a result, a number of other rules and regulations will be generated because of that. Clean energy future was one of the items that was of major focus that they wanted to definitely address and make sure that we are paying attention to that. And in the previous administration, when President Obama became the president, one of the major points of interest and discussion at all times was what can we do to make sure that we are paying attention to our utility consumption. And there were a lot of incentives and a lot of programs put in place where companies and industry could take advantage of. And I have a strong feeling this will be an administration that will bring those back into effect. Rejoining the Paris Treaty, naturally that agreement was one of the most important things we had going for a number of years, and we were focused on it. The carbon pollution is another area of interest where they had announced that they were going to make sure that we will work towards a carbon neutral practice. Naturally, we cannot take carbon out of our environment because it is something that is produced as a result of a lot of natural settings in the planet, but by producing a lot more of it is something that I believe the administration is putting a lot of focus on. And one of the other things that it was a great segue into making sure a group of advisors are going to be selected that would put a lot of focus on this, and their unbiased opinion and scientific-based advice would be given to the Biden-Harris administration. So these were some of the main ones that naturally caught my attention. And I believe in due time, it's only been a couple of months, in due time, setting back, if not all the 98, but perhaps setting back more of the rules and regulations and the environmental issues that were rolled back into place.
So it sounds like there are a lot of changes coming. Is there a blueprint yet outlining how all of these changes will be implemented?
Well, naturally, at the level that we get involved, a lot of times the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, sets the path moving forward as to what needs to be done, how things needs to be captured, and where do we go to make sure that the environmental rules and regulations are enforced and are in place. Most often, these rules have always been in place, but perhaps not enforced as much within the past administration. So I would imagine that will take a priority, and the department will do what it's supposed to be doing rather than sitting back and not doing anything. And then how the state level agencies and local agencies approach taking up the mandates that are being rolled out by EPA. Again, I have to say our country, US, has always been one of the most important countries to look up to in terms of paying attention to the rules, environmental rules and regulations. And I believe now it would be the enforcement and the execution of what was in place would become more of interest and concern of the new administration.
In your opinion, what are some solutions that could help?
Some of the solutions that we could naturally refer to, I have always been an advocate for the industry and manufacturing growth in our country. The backbone of our country for years and years was the strong manufacturing capabilities that we had and being able to produce. So as we try to do right by what the rules and regulations are with respect to the industry, I also believe if companies and if industries have a sustainability program in place from the get-go, or if they're opening up brand new facilities, to pay attention to what could things be done the right way rather than ignoring them, and then if you have to go back in and put it back in place. To put it lightly, if you do things right from the beginning, it costs a lot less to go back. It will cost a lot less than going back and having to redo it. So paying attention to what the local rules and regulations are for any given facility, any given manufacturing, wherever they may be, and implementing those as you go along. That would be one of the most important things that I would recommend for companies to look at, and pay attention to the environmental health sciences. A lot of companies, larger corporations, have an EHS person to make sure that they allow them to do the right thing for the company. Whereas we've come across circumstances and situations where at times they say, well, we know what needs to be done, but the corporation is not really allowing us to move that way, or it costs too much. If you really do it right, the costs are not as horrendous as it used to be. And if you do it properly, it really involves a lot less of the human resources as well as the financials that will go into it. So just pay attention to it rather than ignoring it.
So at the beginning of the video cast, I mentioned potential opportunities that may arise from all of this change. What opportunities do companies have during this time of transition?
Well, opportunities would be, a lot of companies are able to perhaps take a look at this segue into doing things with the climate change in mind. That on its own can have a growth for various sectors and expansion of product lines. Just one example that I will share with you. Last year, with the pandemic and all that was going on, we do work with a lot of folks in the plastics industry of various types, with plastic packaging, packaging for food, for pharmaceutical, for just anything you can think of. Their business went up tremendously, and they were all doing the work that they need to do and their expansion, all with the proper environmental rules and regulations in mind. So it gave a rise to an expansion of business within an industry that was always under the attack of, well, plastics are not good or plastic bags are not good. But we've noticed all of our food were double bagged this last year to make sure that we all stayed protected. So doing things the right way could potentially put a proper spotlight on you, that you're able to even grow business and you're able to grow your product lines and you're able to expand your business opportunities.
Okay, so my last question is, what challenges do businesses face as they move to implement pollution remediation efforts? And how do these challenges differ between the United States and other areas of the world?
Well, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have had EPA in US for years, and the rules and regulations have always been in place. US is probably by far one of the countries that had always been looked up to. And some of the local agencies, we have a local agency here, South Coast Air Quality Management District, also known as SCAQMD, that is really known to be the toughest in the nation and also looked up to abroad in other countries. I happen to be working with them closely on a number of initiatives and new rules and regulations that they try to bring about. So US has always had this body of government in place in order to make sure the environmental issues are kept at the forefront of companies' focuses. So I like to see US being put back in that position. And the challenges that the companies may face, as I mentioned, it has become a myth that it costs a lot to do this. Whereas if you look at it in the long run, if it is part of your planning process from the get-go, it really does not have the exuberant costs associated with it. And putting pollution control equipment, it brings about a lot of safety within some facilities and operations. It can easily take all the pollution that is coming off of a facility and we can bring it back in terms of heat source as well as energy that comes back to the plant. So again, if we look at it from the get-go, from the standpoint of let's do it right from the beginning and have a plan, whereas it may have not been looked into carefully from the beginning, it should not be as challenging. With respect to other countries, one of the other things that I always share and mention is we have no geographic boundaries in our air. Therefore, anything any country does anywhere will eventually be affected by the air and the air pollution that we may be facing in other parts of the world. A number of years ago, China started paying a lot of attention and following the footstep of what some of the local agencies as well as the EPA is doing here. They have made a lot of effort in cleaning the air, especially coming from the industrial facilities. We do have operations there. For the first time in 6 years that I was traveling, I was able to see the skies of Shanghai. This was pre-pandemic, which was really interesting, whereas before it was impossible. So as challenging as it has become for them to pay attention to this, but they're doing it. So India is beginning to look into that, and we also have presence there because they're also a very polluted country in terms of not having any of these stringent rules and regulations in place. And then at the end, I've always been a big proponent of trying to have rules and regulations implemented that doesn't kill the industry. Everything can be done within reason. So when adhering to some of the regulations becomes quite challenging, naturally as an engineer, I always say, well, we need to look outside the box and see what could be done in order for us to get closer to that. So I really believe it's not impossible if we really put our mind and our arms around it to see what is our main focus and really become environmentally conscious and pay attention. Climate change is here. Climate change is not hoax. Climate change really is happening as we see it around us. And all of that is, can it be reversed? I don't know. Can we stop it? Absolutely. That process of stopping it and becoming conscious about it, maybe it'll give us an opportunity to do the right thing and roll it back just a little bit.
Well, Anusha, I'd like to thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today. There seems to be a lot of uncertainty in regards to what's to come, but your insights have been really helpful. So thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you for the opportunity. I absolutely love and enjoy what I do, and my goal has always been to make sure that with proper and sound engineering, we provide solutions. And I truly believe the era that we're moving into with electrical cars, with promises of 2035 becoming a year that number of car companies are committed to making sure that they are all electric. So if we just start thinking consciously about what can be done, the challenges may sort of be dissolved within the process of thinking outside the box. I absolutely enjoyed our conversation, and thank you again for the opportunity.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it as well. I would also like to thank our viewers for watching our video cast. Until next time.